Manila, and it is a beautiful day in Seattle. It is Tuesday, April 2nd, so not quite April Fool's Day, so this is for real this time. I'm a drag counselor by day and a drag queen by night, and in those professions, I have met a wonderful guy through the decades, a man that we call Egan Orion. He asked me to introduce him, and I'm so honored to do that for him and for his constituents, future constituents, and of course his family and friends. I want to write something down, but I can go on and on and on. He is a wonderful, amazing man, and I am so honored that he is going forward and venturing into politics in a very concrete way. He is a man of his words. He is a man of honor. He not only thinks of things to create, he actually makes them. And he only doesn't make them for himself, he makes it for his community. And I am part of his community. And it is my pleasure and honor again to introduce to all of you, running for City Council for District 3, Mr. Egan Orion.
Thank you, Alexa. We work regularly at the Pride Festival every year and have for a very long time, so I'm so thrilled to have Alexa and community here with me today. Well, hello everyone and welcome. My name is Egan Orion and I'm running for Seattle City Council District 3. My roots in this particular district run deep. My grandparents lived here in the 1930s and 40s. And the one reason that I chose this particular spot for announcing was because my grandparents lived in that building that's back there behind the teriyaki place on Broadway, and that's actually where my mom was conceived. You could say that it's part of my origin story. My mom was raised in the Mount Maker neighborhood, and later when she married my dad, they moved to Auburn and had me. I landed back in District 3 after I came out as gay in the early 90s. And I remember watching the Pride Parade on Broadway just a few steps from here, literally, and feeling like I'd arrived someplace special, someplace where I could be myself and be safe. Little did I know that 15 years later, I would be producing the Pride Festival downtown, and 10 years after that, a newly imagined Pride Festival right here on Broadway, which attracts 50,000 annual attendees. I returned to the neighborhood of my grandparents in the Central District just after 9/11 to buy a house and settle down on a quiet, friendly street with black and white, straight and gay, families and single people. And despite the affordability crisis, our neighborhood has largely maintained its diversity. But throughout District 3, others have not been so lucky. A recent documentary declared that Seattle is dying. I believe that couldn't be further from the truth. There's arguably more opportunity and prosperity in Seattle than there's ever been, but it has left many behind. Folks who can't afford the high rents, workers who don't make a living wage, families that have to decide between having one kid or no children at all because the cost of living is so high. For these people, city government, including my opponent, Kshama Sawant, have failed them. People talk about the homelessness crisis, but it's really three different things. A shelter crisis, a mental health crisis, an addiction crisis, and an affordability crisis. All three things must be addressed in order to improve the lives of our unsheltered neighbors, to ensure that our communities are healthy and vibrant, and to create more opportunities for workers so they can work and live here and raise their families here. First, about the shelter crisis. People are languishing on our city streets without access to bathrooms, to running water, and to the services they so desperately need. We need a significant increase in low barrier shelter so that there's a safe, secure place for all who want it. Getting folks into shelter has the added benefit of getting them direct access to services and a firm foundation to help them navigate their future. Mental health care and addiction services are essential if we're to solve the current crisis. For those who are unsheltered, mental health and substance abuse are often impediments to getting work and even doing the everyday tasks that the rest of us take for granted. And if not addressed with beds on demand and trauma-informed care, those folks will fall through the cracks and end up right back out in the streets again. Washington State is expected to make a big investment in mental health care this year, and we need to push them and the county for increased funding now. There's no lasting way out of the homelessness crisis without that funding. There is affordable housing in the pipeline, but there needs to be more, much more. The recent MHA upzone will help with that. We also need to get creative and figure out how to incentivize owners to bring empty apartments and old hotel rooms, and there's a lot of them, up to code so that they can be occupied. We also need to continue to support organizations like Capitol Hill Housing who are creating the affordable housing of tomorrow. Recently, I attended the ribbon cutting ceremony for the new Liberty Bank building at 24th and Union, which has an African-American occupancy rate of 87%. For those redlined to the Central District in the 60s and 70s, and then displaced by rising mortgages, rents, and development over the last 20 years, this gives historic residents of the neighborhood a way to stay there. As a city council member, I will support community preference in affordable housing, which will give those who have roots in the neighborhood a better chance of staying there close to friends, family, and the services they've always known. The most effective strategy of all with regards to affordability is to keep people in the housing they already have. Short-term financial support to help families bridge an emergency and providing renters with free legal help to avoid eviction are simple and effective ways to keep people in their houses and stop them from ever becoming homeless in the first place. Here in Seattle, we live in one of the most innovative places on earth. Why are we not using our best and brightest to create a comprehensive end-to-end system to keep track of all the individuals we're serving, to make sure that everyone is getting the services they need, and to ensure that no one is falling through the cracks? We have companies right here who have worked in other cities to great success in efforts like this. Think of the efficiencies we could create by using the right technology for some of the most perplexing issues we face. At that Liberty Bank building event that I mentioned just a minute ago, I was happy to see my opponent, Kshama Sawant. How do you know it's an election year? When the council member from District 3 shows up at community and events and forums in the district. The other 3 years, I heard citizens and community groups, and I asked this question myself, where is Kshama Sawant? The citizens of District 3 deserve a council member who will be there every year, every day in fact, on the ground, talking to voters, talking to small businesses, to nonprofits, figuring out what's working and listening to the ideas of constituents to figure out how to make it better. I've run 2 small businesses from District 3. I have a lot of nonprofit leadership experience. In my work with Pride Fest, I create the largest event in the district, Pride Fest Capitol Hill, which happens just steps from here. I also manage the largest festival day in all of Seattle, Pride Fest at Seattle Center. I built community with dozens, actually more like 150 flash mobs that have happened both here and around the country that have that have entertained the region and tens of millions of people around the globe through YouTube. Through my work with the Capitol Hill Chamber of Commerce and Broadway Business Improvement Area, I interact with small businesses on a daily basis. With our ratepayer contributions, I manage 7-day-a-week cleaning of Broadway, including needles and graffiti that have become an everyday part of our urban landscape. I know the day-to-day in District 3 because I'm here every day doing the work to improve the lives of citizens and the prosperity of small businesses. But where has Kshama Sawant been? The citizens of District 3 deserve someone who can build bridges, not burn them. I worked across organizations on Capitol Hill in 3 neighborhoods, ours, First Hill, and Chinatown ID, to bring back homeless outreach workers to the neighborhood, who will be back in service the middle of this month, in fact. When I reached out to meet with Kshama Sawant, I got no response. Even the day I went to go give public testimony for it on council, she wasn't on the dais. She had the day off. As has been the experience of many citizens and organizations in District 3, I had to go around her to get anything done. But despite her absence and working in coalition, I was able to get funding for 3 full-time homeless outreach workers serving 3 different neighborhoods to connect our unsheltered neighbors to resources and give residents and businesses another tool to help keep our streets and sidewalks healthy, safe, and vibrant. The citizens of District 3 deserve a council member who won't just talk, but will act. Results over rallies. Real progress over talk. I have a record of building coalitions to get hard things done, building large events and movements to give voice to the voiceless and a seat at the table for those who have so long been denied a seat. I raised nearly $15,000 to support Referendum 74 for same-sex marriage in Washington, and my nonprofit has raised tens of thousands of dollars for community nonprofits, including and especially local HIV/AIDS charities that benefit from our Red Dress event. On Capitol Hill, I've tackled the day-to-day impediments that keep small businesses from thriving, and on council, I'll continue to fight for workers in the district and across the city to ensure they can make a living wage and can remain in Seattle and contribute to its future prosperity. I brought you here to this spot not only because my mom was conceived in that building back there, but also to highlight some of the work that I've done in the district. Back there against that building, there used to be a bunch of dumpsters, and it was a real hot spot. And it would attract a lot of illegal dumping. It was a real mess. So I worked with Seattle Public Utilities to convert businesses to bag service and help clean up one of the neighborhood's worst hotspots. I also wanted to highlight the building over there, which used to be home to an iconic restaurant called the Broadway Grill that I used to go to in my youth. It has sat vacant for years. I think something like 6 or 7 years now. I even know business owners who are interested in renting it. And yet, year after year, it continued to sit vacant, a dead zone in an otherwise thriving commercial district. As part of my empty windows policy, we will encourage property owners to act in the neighborhood good rather than sitting on a property to wait for a better deal to come along. Finally, last week, the building did go up for sale, so hopefully we'll see another business in that place soon and we can return a vibrant part of Broadway to its former glory. Look, I appreciate Kshama Sawant expanding the boundaries of political discourse in the city. I am thankful that she was a champion in her first term for $15 an hour. But her tenure in City Hall is one of dysfunction during a time when we need competent, hardworking, practical leaders in City Council to get the work of the people done. Seattle is not dying. It is prospering, but many have been left behind. With your help as your council member, we can give every unsheltered person in the city a place to feel safe and secure, provide them with services, and get them on the road to permanent housing. For those being displaced by changing communities and higher rents, build out affordable housing that keeps people in neighborhoods they call home, and ask developers and large employers to contribute their fair share to ensure a shared prosperity for all of us. Fight for a living wage, restore confidence in City Hall so it works for you and helps to solve the myriad problems our city faces. And not for nothing, but I would also love to see a queer voice back on City Hall this year. In the end, I believe that together we can create a healthy, safe, vibrant city we can all be proud of. There's a lot of work to do. So join me and let's get started. Thank you. And now, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
I have one.
Justin from the Capitol Hill blog.
So what will happen with a queer voice in City Hall in Seattle in 2019? What will that voice talk about?
That's a good question. I think that we have the impression living in the bubble of Capitol Hill that every place is safe for especially queer youth in this city. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think that having more people who are LGBT on city council and in city government gives those young kids who feel like they don't have a place in this world, it gives them another example of how they can participate and that we can be visible and be ourselves. And I think there's lots of opportunities to create safer schools for those kids and safer neighborhoods in general. Yeah.
You just made the case that you're wait for that fire truck.
Yeah.
You just made the case that you're a pro-housing, pro-small business guy. There was an issue that divided this city, as you know, last year with the employee hours, the head tax.
Yeah.
If that was presented again to you while you were on the council, where would you sign with it?
Well, first of all, it's pretty clear that that head tax was not going to survive a legal challenge anyways. I think that it felt to me a little half-baked in the first place. I think that we definitely need more funding. So it's not a question of more funding, it's about how we get it and the process that we undertake in order to get there. I think that, first of all, people have to have confidence that the city council has a plan, is using the money that they currently have well, and that they can execute on the plan that they have. And then I think voters would be more than willing to support the council in whatever funds they need to get. I mean, the Seattle voters are not opposed to giving more of their tax money to worthy things that the city is doing. I think that also a process that invites stakeholders from every part of our community to be part of deciding what the best process is going forward as far as what funding source we choose would be important. And I think that that was lacking in this last process.
Do you think the council is spending money wisely right now?
I think that there's lots of places for innovation. I think that there's groups that have been defunded and then refunded and then defunded. So I think that there's definitely an opportunity to use that money better. I think citizens that walk the streets of Seattle every day see our unsheltered neighbors languishing on the streets. We have over $100 million that is devoted to the homelessness crisis, and you would think that that money was going to be used to address the needs of those citizens today. And I think there's a better way that the money could be used, for sure.
You mentioned better leveraging technology to come up with some of these solutions. Do you see that as the way Kshama Sawant has kind of approached the Amazons and the other tech companies in the city as being a hindrance to getting them on board with something like that? And how would you do something different?
Well, I think it's really hard to say, come partner with us on this when you're demonized as a large employer. I'd also like to say, you know, I'm not here to stand in defense of Amazon at all, but they have tens of thousands of employees that are living in our neighborhoods, attending our shops. They're integrated with our communities, and so whenever they get demonized, they take that on themselves, right? I think that we want the workers for those companies, and we want the stakeholders of those companies to be at the table, to be part of the solution. If they're not going to be part of the solution, then we don't necessarily need their help. We're going to get something done without them. But it would be better to bring everyone to the table instead of ignoring some of the bigger voices in the city.
Do you have any ideas yourself about how to raise that money that you think is needed?
I do have some ideas. Yeah, I think that there's lots of different ways to go about it. I don't want to come in like they did with a pre-baked idea of what the conclusion is going to be, but I think that developers being assessed impact fees like they do in our liberal bastion to the east in Bellevue is a good way to defray some of those costs. I think that a progressive B&O tax increase that wouldn't impact our small businesses and only impact our largest employers would be another consideration I put on the table. Yeah, for sure.
Many would join you in your criticism of Councilmember Sawant, but Speak Out Seattle would especially join you in that criticism. So I'm kind of interested to know, what do you think about that group specifically? And would you ever participate in any kind of candidate forum that they organized, or reach out to them in any way?
I would love to speak with someone from that organization and have that chat. I'm open to have conversations with any voters that want to, and any groups that want to be engaged. Anybody else?
Well, I'll throw one more.
Okay.
You really were going after the council members. I guess the way you characterize it, absenteeism here on Capitol Hill. How much of that factors into why you're running? I mean, is it connected?
Yeah, if we had a great council member that I had full confidence in, I would not be in this race. I think we live in a great district and it deserves great representation. I see Pramila Jayapal way more in this district, and just on Capitol Hill, she's here regularly meeting with community groups over her entire tenure as a representative. So I think that that's part of the essential work of a council member, is to meet with constituents, get their ideas about what's working and what's not, and take that back to whatever governing body that is, whether it's the United States House of Representatives or City Council.
Part of the issues with the homeless situation is also harm reduction, and right now the city has put on hold plans to open up a safe consumption site. How do you feel about that? Should they go back to the table and get that done?
I'm all for safe consumption sites. I'm all about harm reduction. I think that creating a little more of a comprehensive system so that we can take people from homelessness to permanent housing and all the steps in between, and I think would be more effective if these one-off solutions can be part of a solution, but I would rather come up with a comprehensive plan in order to address all those issues. Because, you know, if you're still using, and okay, sure, you're not going to overdose if you're in a safe consumption site, but then you're going to go back out to the streets, and what sort of safety net do you have at that point? I think we have to look at these things individually, but also in their totality.
You went over a pretty hefty CV there. You got a lot going on. Do you plan on putting that some of that on hold, or deferring to some other staff members so you can kind of focus more on D3?
I am learning to delegate. I will continue in my current roles for the foreseeable future. But yes, definitely, I'm a first-time candidate for political office. I don't necessarily know what all this is going to entail. They've told me what I'll be doing, but I think that once you're on the ground talking to voters and working day to day and raising money for your campaign, I think it becomes a different reality. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Anything else? Thank you for coming out today. Appreciate it. This is for a city council race for this district, for District 3.
What's your name?
Egan, Orion.
Christine.
Christine, yeah, for sure.
Have a good day.
You too.
Congratulations.
All right.
Good. Great Q&A.
Hi, how are you? Hi.
Oh yeah, you need this.